5 years. It has been 5 years, half a decade since Piggy came out. It's crazy looking back on how big this game has become. According to Minitoon, he made this game because he saw one of those Survive the Peppa Pig horror games and thought he could do it better, which is crazy considering how big this game became. Seriously though, this game lasted nearly 2 years in just its main story, and even after the main story ended, he still updates the game time to time. And even when he doesn't, it's able to consistently have over 10,000, sometimes 20,000 players, which is just crazy for a game that ended over 3 years ago. This month I've been looking back at this game and realizing how big this game is, especially for a Roblox game. It has 24 main chapters, 6 character-focused chapters, and a ton of lore which most people don't even know about because of how hidden it is. And on top of the main story, there are all the skins, traps, abilities, and then there's build mode, which has created an entire sub-community within itself where people are able to create some amazing maps and basically make their own little games. And I know there are a lot of people who don't really understand why this game is as popular as it is, and don't understand what makes this game so special, and there are a lot of answers to that. Some might say the community of it, some might say the charm of it, some might say the fun of it, some might say the variety of it, and the list goes on. But to me, what makes this game so special is its story, character development, and message. For the story, I really love how it just makes sense. Like for example, take FNAF, a game that people have been theorizing and trying to solve for an entire decade now, and people haven't even gotten close to solving it. If you take a look at any timeline video on the game, each one of them will be completely different because there is so much in these games, and even books that just don't add up with each other, which makes it all extremely hard to figure out. Like seriously, if you just look at the duration of them, some will be 1 hour long and some will be up to 8 hours long. And I know a lot of people like that about the lore, but to me, it just becomes frustrating after a while. Even Tom from Game Theory talks about this at the end of a video where he tries to solve a FNAF book that is seemingly canon, but can't since every possible solution just doesn't add up with some very little but important thing. But with Piggy, while yeah, there are a ton of weird secrets and Easter eggs in the game, it all makes sense if you actually do your research, and you can tell Minitoon really does care about the story. And you can tell he knows what it is, and is still trying to tie up loose ends, which I think he's recently been able to do very efficiently. For example, last year we got a ton of new Piggy content, but for the main Piggy game we got 2 new chapters, Time and Decay, and there is just so much in these chapters that add to the lore. For example, in Decay, in the badge of the chapter, there is Morse code that translates to "Your eyes tell lies," which at first I thought was a line from Tio, but no, he never showed up. So what does this mean? Well, in the chapter, Bunny sees infected all over the place, which must mean she's not infected, but then you see her wake up in the same place where she got infected, which should mean she's infected, right? Well, this gets explained at the end of this chapter when Bunny shoots an infected, but then we see that it wasn't actually an infected, and she shot an innocent person thinking it was an infected, which then leads to her getting shot. Which then makes the line make sense. Your eyes tell lies. So it seems when someone is infected, they're actually trying to kill you on purpose, and they just see you as infected. Which is crazy that over 4 years later, we got a lore drop this big, which only shows how Minitoon does care about tying up loose ends and further explaining the story. Then we have the time map where we time travel to the medieval times and see that the prince went missing, and we see some drawings of the prince's bedroom that shows that he got kidnapped by Mr. Stitchy. Which completely adds up with the tombs we see in docks that say King Milo, Queen Viola, then an empty coffin which shows that the prince was never found because the prince is now Tio. Which again, same thing. Over 4 years later, Minitoon is still trying to tie up loose ends to help out with making the story make sense, which just shows how much he actually puts thought and care into the story, which is a part one loves so much about Piggy. But something I love even more about Piggy is its character development. Even in Book 1, we get a ton of character development with Mr. P, Georgie, and even the player. For Mr. P, we see how his guilt from starting the infection slowly builds up to the point that he starts to have hallucinations about it. For the player, we see how he loses both of his best friends to the infection and only takes advantage of that, showing him a ghost of Bunny and Doggy in the plant while he goes to the forest where Doggy died, the school where he met Bunny, the metro where Bunny died, and the carnival where he met Zizzy and Pony, which only shows he's worried he'll lose them too. And lastly, with Georgie, we get a full character-focused chapter dedicated to him where we see his guilt for leaving his sister behind. Now, I know a lot of people are really confused about what happened here, but I think this is an example of how good Minitoon's character development is. In this chapter, we see Georgie waking up in his house after a nightmare, and he tries to tell his sister Penny about it, but she isn't there. So he looks around the house but doesn't find her, and when he finally makes it outside, she just walks away, leaving him to get infected. Then he wakes up in the mall where we found him. Now, if you really think about it, this is the exact same thing that happened to Georgie. Just instead of him having to leave his sister to get infected, his sister leaves him to get infected, which just shows how guilty he is for that. And this is just book 1. Book 2 is a lot more in depth with this, and there are a ton of characters that get more development in this, like the player, pony, doggy, etc. And there are so many new characters who get big character development, and I really can't talk about all of them in this one video. But I can talk about the one that I think is the best case of character development in book 2, and really the whole game, Willow. Willow had a tough childhood. Her family was really poor and had to resort to stealing food, but they eventually got arrested for that. Then Daisy had to come and become Willow and her brother William's caretaker, and William got really attached to her. But eventually Daisy had to leave to fight with the army, and they were left alone. William was really attached to her, so Willow goes out to get him a pie. But when Willow comes back, William's gone. From what we can tell, William ran away to find her. This breaks Willow. She eventually also gets arrested for stealing food, but escapes when the infection breaks out. Because of her whole family being gone, she's broken and becomes really cruel towards others, including the player, when they set up a trap for seemingly no reason, and they just put Zizzy in a room with an infected, seemingly just to spite Pony for leaving TSP. She eventually destroys the safe place and locks them all up. They're able to escape through the sewers, but eventually Willow finds them and tries to shoot Pony, but Giraffe takes the hit instead. This shows how cruel Willow has become, trying to kill someone just for leaving her. You think that she would try to shoot the player for being the one to lock her up, but she doesn't. She tries to shoot Pony for leaving TSP, for leaving her. Later they get outside and she realizes that Zizzy had sisters. She realizes that she did the exact thing that broke her to someone else, and eventually vows to find a cure for Zizzy so that the same thing that happened to her wouldn't happen again to Zizzy and Z. When Willow's remembering what happened with her family, a song plays titled The Untold Story, which has the lyrics, This shows how Willow chose a path and stuck to it, how she regrets doing that. Honestly, I can't really convey how good this development is by just trying to explain it in a segment of a YouTube video, so I recommend you just go and play the game yourself and really pay attention to the small details like Willow shooting Pony and not the player. But this isn't even the thing I love the most about this game. Every single character, or at least every single main character, has had guilt about something. Mr. P with creating the infection, the player with his best friend getting infected, Pony with letting him get pushed around by Willow into infecting Doggy, Tigray with killing Danny, etc. But all this has one theme in common: forgiveness. Forgiveness is the main message of Piggy, both of others and of yourself. This has been the message of the entire game, which I love. For example, in Book 1, the book ends off with us having to telling Georgie that he needs to forgive Mr. P for what he did, because if he doesn't, he's no better than him. Willow in the first half of Book 2 isn't able to forgive others, and it makes her really evil and cruel, but then realizes that she's doing the exact thing that broke her to others. And the whole message of Book 1 and the first half of Book 2 is to forgive each other, because if you try to take revenge on someone, well, that just makes you worse than them. On the other hand, the second half of Book 2 is about forgiving yourself. In Chapter 10, we get introduced to a character who had been teased for a long time in Book 2, whose name is Tio. He becomes the real antagonist of Book 2, and his main motives are unclear, but we know that he wants people to join him. And how does he do this? He toys with people's guilt, then tells them that all their problems will be fixed if you just shake his hand, which, spoilers, they don't get fixed. We see this happening when it gets revealed that he was the one who showed the player all the places where he either met his friends or where they died. He was the one who showed him a ghost of Bunny in the outpost, and later a ghost of Bunny and Doggy in the plant. And from what we can tell, he was the one to give Mr. P hallucinations, and he was the one who gave Georgie that dream. All this time when we've seen people have guilt was emphasized by Tio. Essentially, he gives people problems, then tells them that he can fix them as long as they join him. A lot of times the reason someone has guilt is because of something they did to someone, but throughout the game they have to forgive each other. Like the player in Pony, or with Georgie and Mr. P, or with Tigray and Willow. And while yes, this is a big theme in the game of forgiving others, a bigger theme is letting go of your guilt. In the hidden ending, which is now kind of the true ending since Piggy Misfits is a thing, We have to go around helping others fight off their bad memories. Then we use our good memories to help us defeat Tio, who's been the source of our guilt all along. And throughout all this, a song called Let Go plays, which, well, talks about letting go. Just listen to it. The whole song talks about being held back by the past, but being able to break free and letting go of the past, which is basically what the whole game is about. I really do love this game's story and message, and again, I highly recommend you go through the whole game and just pay attention to the things like that. I'm sure you could find a group of people in Book 2 who will be willing to do it with you, and private servers are free, so there's nothing to lose. While all the songs of the game have been to show the emotions and thoughts the characters were going through, the final song of the game talks about the emotions the players of the game are going through. The final song of the game, Traveling Time, talks about how time flies by, and you have to say goodbye sometimes, even if you don't want to, but that's okay, because life goes on. Which, just like the other ones are talking about the emotions the characters are going through, this final song talks about the emotions we, the players, are going through. Just listen to this song. This game was so beautiful, and it was so much fun theorizing about what was going on and what was to come. I have so many great memories from this game, like finding both hidden endings when Tio finally showed up, being surprised when Distorted Memory came out instead of Chapter 12, when Build Mode came out, and when I first played the game. I remember back in 2020, every morning I would wake up, I would go to YouTube, and I would watch whatever Dennis had uploaded, and one day, he played this game called Piggy. It was like Granny, but with Peppa Pig. It seemed like a fun little game, so I played it, and yeah, it was fun. After the first 3 chapters, a story started to form, and I got really invested in it, as did a lot of other people. So I would watch videos about the story, then one day I came across this video by Creekcraft recommended to me, and I really liked it. So I watched another of his videos, and from there, I would watch every single upload by Creek to this day. It's crazy how this game is able to give someone an entire career, and me an entire, or at least part of a childhood. And a very big one. To this day, the game is able to sit at a consistent 10 to 20,000 active players, and the build mode community is still really active. It's always fun to just go into build mode and play some custom maps with the community, and sometimes make my own. The game still does get updated from time to time with things like the Time and Decay map, or some new build mode updates which are always fun to play around with. The latest update was the Paranormal Pigmoss update, which was one of the biggest updates we had, and probably will get to Piggy in quite a while. This season was so much fun to complete for me. At first, it was daunting seeing the 8-hour timer on the final award, but it actually didn't take long since I was able to just play some maps for fun and get all the prizes fairly quickly. I also really enjoyed the new map, and the new skins are so good. Props to Team I2 for making all this. It was a ton of fun. But just because Piggy ended doesn't mean Piggy ended. Yeah, I know that sounds confusing, but there are 3 new games in the works technically, for if you count Pig 64 as one of them. Back in June, Pig 64 Part 1 was released, which was a ton of fun to play through, and the second part should be dropping rather soon, and it's looking pretty good. This game is leading up to a whole new prequel for the game, which I'm super hyped for. After this, we'll be getting a whole spin-off called Misfits about Willow and Tigray, which I'm also really excited for, and it seems in about a year we'll see Piggy Intercity, which I am most hyped for since this game has been in the works for about 2 years now, and is also looking really good and is apparently going to be way bigger than Piggy, and will explore a lot about the insolence, which I'm very excited for. So the future for this game, and soon-to-be game series, is looking really bright, and I'm excited for it. This game was an amazing game, and it is definitely my favorite game on Roblox. Even to this day, there's a lot to do with build mode, and that part of the community is still really active, so thank you. Thanks to all the content creators who helped make this game and community as big as it is. Thank you to all of the community for being a great one, and thank you so much to the developers of this game. Both on the main Piggy game team, Intercity team, Wizard Watch Studios, and Team I2R, and thanks to Moon, Minitoon's girlfriend, for encouraging him to make a lot of updates last year, and most of all, thank you to Minitoon for making this game as good as it was.